Hazing seems to be an issue that crops up again and again, especially on college campuses. Some tasks that students are put up to often involve humiliation and binge drinking and have led to sickness and sometimes even death. A University of Massachusetts fraternity facing 4 grand jury indictments was suspended by the college, and then this fall, its parent organization over hazing allegations. I spoke with Dr. Elain Campbell, a clinical psychologist at River Valley Counseling Center, about what qualifies as hazing.
So hazing is considered a rite of passage for certain groups or organizations to become a member of their group, and it usually incorporates some challenges or tasks that could be anywhere from, completing a hike or doing something like that, all the way to all the things you hear in the news, which are, consuming massive amounts of alcohol, being humiliated, being spanked, being, abused in ways that normally you would not voluntarily let yourself be abused.
Right. So is there something about the nature of groups psychologically that makes people willing to, one, subject themselves to this type of thing? Let's start there. Right. You might not necessarily in a one-on-one situation agree to something like this, but in a group setting, is it more common? Or what's behind that?
Well, it's really about wanting to be, humans are social creatures. We do want to be part of something bigger and more important than just ourselves. That's our very nature. But these groups that people are trying to be a part of really bring with them power that the person is wanting, and the initiation rites are really meant to build loyalty and commitment to the group and make the group be, much bigger than the person themselves.
And so for the person who's doing the hazing, taking part in that activity, saying, drink X amount or run around the campus 75 times or whatever,
right.
Act of humiliation that it is, what's in it for them? It's power?
Power and control. The younger group is coming in and you want to establish yourself as the one to be respected, to be obedient to, that you have the control over the newer members of the group. So it's really automatically establishing a chain of command, and also the fact that you went through it yourself.
And so then the person who's coming in, the new person who's allowing themselves to be subjected to this, they are looking to fit in. What's their motivation?
They're looking to be in the group. They're passing whatever test that's put in front of them so they can be a member of that group. And then being a member of that group wields them some type of power, or they wouldn't go through it.
Is there anything that we know about psychologically why this is typically fraternities, sororities, sports groups, why those types of settings tend to cultivate this type of behavior?
Definitely. The military is known for hazing also. Some of the things the military does for hazing could be seen as making sure the member is up to the task of being part of their group, like the Marines or something like that.
They're strong enough or tough enough?
Correct. Okay. But with fraternities and sports groups and gangs are also known for these types of rituals. It's really about, that you're doing whatever we ask, then we're going to let you into our group.
There was one study that showed that 71% of those who are hazed suffer some type of negative consequences psychologically. Do we have any sense of what those are? Can you talk about a few of what those might be?
Oh, death is one. There's been over 200 deaths that have been documented deaths in, the United States since the 1800s. So it's also not like this is a new problem. But then when you mix alcohol with all the people involved in the activity, and then you also mix a majority of the events are conducted young men. Not that sororities don't have hazing, but it's much less in number or extreme use of abusive tactics.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's really, about, that bonding. It's, to me, I didn't see this anywhere in the literature, but it's really about trauma bonding in a way, and secrecy, And, you know, these are not things that are publicized. And many times they take people off campus or away. Sometimes it's right on campus, but those are more the pranks or the tricks that they're public that aren't, they might be embarrassing, but they're not necessarily harmful. But it's the really dangerous ones, you know, bondage, abuse of alcohol, you know, starvation, you know, physical abuse, sexual abuse, you know, all of those type of things, you know, that can make lasting traumatic scars on a
I know
person.
that trauma is an area of research that you've done a lot of
Absolutely.
work with.
Correct.
What do we know about what these types of behaviors, the traumatic impacts that they have on people?
Well, first of all, again, a lot of times this is young men, and young men are not often people that will come forward as like, oh, help me with my trauma. You know, they're basically, we send young men off to war because they're all about, you know, being tough and being, you know, they're stoic, right. And so they're not going to say, this horrible thing happened to me and I need help with it. They're just going to try to put it behind them and be tougher and
so what does
keep
hanging
it
on
inside.
to that do to someone? How does it show up in a person's day-to-day life, or does it?
Right. Oh, absolutely. It can cause depression. It can cause anxiety. It can cause traumatic memories. It can cause all sorts of health issues. You know, our mind is not separated from our body, so there's, you know, you could have stomach issues, you could have head issues, not just psychological, but headaches, migraines, that kind of thing. There's all sorts of physical and mental aspects of trauma that just eat at the body for a lifetime.
So whether it's the physiological, the psychological impacts, or the legal implications, which you haven't even talked about yet. You know, Massachusetts, this has been on the books in Massachusetts as something that's illegal since 1985.
Yes.
And there's penalties, you know, monetary penalties associated with it, things like that. Why do people continue to do these things despite the many negative implications that they can hold?
Well, first of all, the laws are not often enforced. They're also not well written. They're also sometimes when they've come up before courts or whatever, you have judges who were members of fraternities or groups that do not have what it takes to actually prosecute these crimes. Because any of these issues, if you took in a single event or against a single person, you would not question, if you described the event, that would be a crime, right? I mean, tying somebody up, you could say it's not against their will because
But the law even now says, consent or not,
right.
It's still an illegal act.
Correct. But how many times does it get prosecuted? Very rare, you know, and, you know, fraternities are banned for a number of years, but they come back or they go off campus, but their whole, all their alum keep them going, are very dedicated to the cause, and so they just keep going.
Do you think it's a matter of more stringent laws on top of, as you're saying, you know, more strident prosecution?
I mean, I would love to put out challenges to these groups to come up with you know, rework their whole idea of how to have initiations that don't kill people. You know, I mean, these are young, bright, amazing people. It's really like, you guys can't think of a better way, like, you know, raise money for the homeless, or who comes up with a creative, it's just hard to believe that the groups themselves can't dig in and find the motivation to not participate in shame, humiliation, and abuse as part of what they're proud of. You know, that's very hard to imagine that they can't figure that out.